In this video, we're going to cover using variations with estimates. We're going to cover turning on the option for variations in System Setup. We will create estimates with variations. We're going to be adding and cloning variations, and we'll do a recap of the things that we've reviewed. A variation is really nothing more than a means to provide your prospect with varying options within the same estimate. Let's go ahead and switch to Control and take a look at some examples. Before you can do a variation, you have to turn the option on in System Setup. To do so, follow these steps. Setup, System Setup, Estimate Options, Edit, select Use Variations for Estimates, and Save. Let's create our estimate as we normally would. Your customer would also like to see a quote on this same print with the option of having lamination on it. So what you could do is clone the line item into a new variation called, in this case, Variation Cloned, Variation 1 Cloned. We can rename that variation very simply by hitting the Rename button and selecting Variation 2. Now we have a duplicate variation of Variation 1, which we can then go into and add the lamination to the product. Let's go ahead and save this estimate. Looking at the estimate now, we have two variations. This one without the laminate and Variation 2 with the laminate. Besides cloning a variation, you can create a completely different line item by adding a variation. It will prompt you for the name. And then you'll just create a line item like any other. And let's save this. Looking at this estimate now, we have three variations. The first one with no laminate, the second one with laminate, and the third one which is just another option that you're going to present to your customer. When you print the estimate for your customer, they will receive one estimate with three variations, one on each sheet. Estimate 500, option Variation 1, Variation 2, and Variation 3. Setting the active variation will determine what option is displayed when looking at the total screen or exploring estimates in Explorer. By default, Variation 1 is the active variation. So if I look at the line item, I see our total for Variation 1 as 170.06. I switch over to my total screen and it reflects the active variation, item 1 at 170.06. And likewise, looking at the Explorer, I see estimate number 500, the total showing as 170.06. Going back to my estimate, I can edit the estimate, select any of my other variations, and set those as active. Looking at Variation 3 has moved to my active spot, showing a total of $138.25, and if I click on the Totals tab, we see the same thing. Likewise, once we save the estimate and look at our Explorer, we see the total showing for our estimate as $138.25. Also note that as part of your variations, you can also delete any variations you don't want by editing the estimate, selecting any of the non-active variations, and hitting the delete button and confirming. Converting estimates with variations follows the same process as regular estimates without variations. The thing to remember being that only one variation may be converted to an order. When the estimate's converted to an order, we'll be prompted to select the variation that we wish to convert. At this point, the estimate's been converted to a WHIP using variation 3, which is the one we selected. In summary, it's important to note that variations must be turned on in System Setup. Variations may be created by adding or cloning line items. Setting a variation as active will determine the total price shown on the estimate and in the Estimate Explorer. And finally, only one variation may be converted to a WHIP.